All right, everyone, we're back joined again by the incomparable Pause. Pause, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you this evening?
Hanging in there. I got some New Belgium Brewing Atomic Pumpkin beer, which is habanero pumpkin. It's very good, actually. It's quite spicy. So we're getting into a spicy topic, maybe. So it's a spicy beer. Um, yeah,
You almost hope it would be if it's using habaneros and pumpkins. That sounds exotic and also delicious.
it has cinnamon as well. It's actually legitimately spicy. You get like a if you drink too many, you can actually get heartburn. So you got to be careful. It's
So,
just,
what I'm taking away from this is that you're on here drinking pumpkin spice beer.
essentially. Oh yeah. It's I mean I'm married to a white girl, so we it's everything is pumpkin spice this time of year. Paz was very kind, and there was a whole siding situation at my house last week, so we couldn't record because there was banging and booming and people, very nice people, shouting and rushing to each other. So we're doing it this week. So thank you, Paz, for being flexible. We're here to discuss one of probably my favorite movie of all time. I think it's probably safe to say. I think it's many people's favorite movie of all time, Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters. Um, Pause. I'm going to assume that you've watched this movie before. I know, in fact, that you've watched it 3 times this week. I think you said in preparation, which is very, very. That's devotion to the franchise, or at least to this movie. Do you want to? I'm somebody who likes to. I'm just curious. Usually, people who love a movie, love a book, love a show, whatever it is, they usually love it for thematic reasons, which we will totally get into in this episode. I guess I can say I actually have a scholarly publication with a good friend and colleague of mine about this movie that was published in an edited volume published by Routledge. So, for whatever that's worth, I'm still kind of blown away that that actually happened. I have an academic publication on Ghostbusters, but what's just as, if not more interesting to me is like people's personal connection to stories, particularly movies and books and things like that. So, like, what's your Ghostbusters history? Do you have one? Did it like stamp a time in your life or is it just a movie you like? It doesn't have to be anything profound,
It's
but
just a movie I like. I'm sorry to disappoint
no,
you.
that's fine.
I can't nearly rival that sort of connection to the film. It's just something that's always spoken to me, and I've really enjoyed it, and plan
Perfectly,
to continue enjoying it as a classic.
perfectly legitimate. And I will say too, it's not like I grew up loving Ghostbusters. It was not quite like that. I think I watched it not in middle school for the first time, not really getting it. I think because so much of the humor is nuanced and very adult. I actually remember thinking it was kind of disturbing, which it actually sort of, we can get into that. It is still a disturbing movie. There's some things that are like objectively strange and I want you inside me. Whoa, it sounds like you got at least two people in there already. I mean, these things are like,
Yeah, I as I was rewatching it, like we said several times this week, I noticed just how slick some of that really was, and I didn't necessarily catch that in previous watches. So I'm like, "Oh, so that's what you're up to here."
yeah. Me and a colleague. I won't say his name here. He's a very good friend of mine, but I think he has kind of a more normal job, and I think he kind of wants to stay that way. Me and a colleague. Anyone can probably find this if you let's put it this way. If you keyword search the title of this episode in Google Scholar, you can, and you search somebody with an author with a last name Brown, you can probably find it. That's what I'll say. Me and a good friend of mine wrote it was his favorite movie, and we had this opportunity, he had an opportunity to turn a project he had done on this movie Ghostbusters into an academic article, and he brought me on. So I was the second author. I wasn't the primary author, but it was in the process of work, and of course I was excited because I did like the movie. But it was in the process of writing this article that I really fell in love with the movie because I was doing some deep research into like Dan Aykroyd's family history because he comes from a family of spiritualists, and I didn't know that. And just it was like through the process of writing this article over the course of maybe like 6 months and just watching, kind of like what you did this week, Pause, just watching the movie over and over again with copious note taking. deep historical research into America and England during the mid to late 1800s with spiritualism and how that all connected to reenchantment and stuff like that. That was really what kind of made me fall in love with the film. But so because thematically, obviously, it's very woo, it's very spooky, but also like I like I know you were maybe a little cautious in your answer of, well, I just like the movie, but I think that's actually ultimately the correct answer, right? It's like it's a great film. And so I don't know if you want to if you want to maybe talk about the merits of the film, because this is ultimately, like I think I just told you before we started recording, this episode's kind of just like Doc Brown's love letter to this movie, because I really love this movie and it's the perfect time of year for it. And I know, Pause, that you're the perfect co-host to have for this. So we can start with the movie, we can start with the themes of the movie, kind of both. It's really I don't want to put you on the spot too much because I know this is you're on my show this time, but I kind of I will give you the option of a choice at least,
Yeah, the illusion of choice, perhaps.
perhaps something like that.
I would say, why don't we start with the movie proper, and then we
Cool.
can gush about why the movie is great.
Yeah. So if people haven't watched this movie, where have you been living? Please watch the film because spoilers will abound. 1984's Ghostbusters, directed by the sadly recently passed Ivan Reitman. I don't know if you heard that.
I
Relatively
hadn't, no.
relatively recently after the newest Ghostbusters dropped, The Frozen Empire, which was actually halfway decent, was pretty good. He died like right after that, the second of the newer ones released, which is really sad. Ivan Reitman, so directed by Reitman and then co-written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. Aykroyd, we still have. He has not yet passed on to the great beyond. Ramis sadly has passed on to the great beyond. They also star in the film. So Dan Aykroyd plays Ray Stantz. Harold Ramis plays Egon Spangler. So two of the Ghostbusters there. It also stars Bill Murray. Bill Murray, the incomparable Bill Murray. And Ernie Hudson. I love Ernie Hudson. And there's other cool little maybe more character actors in the film, but I think William Atherton, who is also notable. What was he in? Die Hard, the Die Hard. I mean, people might
Yes,
from the
that's
Die
right.
Hard. Yeah,
I guess I wasn't even thinking about that, but yeah, he is, isn't he?
yeah. He built an entire career off of playing assholes. I guess it's kind of a strange sort of weird thing. You get Sigourney Weaver, obviously the incomparable Sigourney Weaver, who just had, I believe, her 75th birthday.
That
So
sounds right, yeah.
yeah, Sigourney Weaver is in it as well. Rick Moranis, I guess you say in Canada where he's from. Rick Moranis, awesome as as William Tully, the tax lawyer who becomes a dog. And then doesn't and then
Hold
becomes
on, is it a tax lawyer? I thought he was an actual accountant.
in the second movie. Sorry, I guess in the second movie they sort of, I think they might have fudged that a bit. He's a tax lawyer because he
Okay.
becomes their criminal defense lawyer in the second film, which is pretty goofy.
Yeah, some
Uh,
sort of soft retcon there, because I was
yeah,
almost
there might have
certain
been a
they were
soft
calling
retcon.
him a, I was almost certain they were calling him an accountant
He's an
in the
accountant.
first
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. Whatever he is, he's very funny. It's Rick before he got shrunk and or before he shrunk the kids rather. He was a dog, a hellhound, which is kind of interesting. Annie Potts too as Janine Ghostbusters. What do you want? I mean, it's just this is a loaded cast, I think. And it is again, it's one of these movies where I watch this and I'm like, man, the 80s. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but the 80s just really the quality, like this uh, by rights, this movie should be fun, but it shouldn't be great, I think, because the idea is so preposterous. Like they're paranormal exterminators in New York City. I mean, that sounds fun, and it is obviously super fun, but it feels like it probably on paper should be more of like a B movie, but it's this wonderful amount of heart and soul that gets thrown into in spirit, dare we say, that gets thrown into the film, and that plus the absolutely like perfect comedy of people, the people involved, particularly Bill Murray, right? Because Bill Murray really like seals that.
There's some real magic, with all of them. They had
Yep.
phenomenal chemistry, and I think that's a huge part of it. But Murray, especially, that guy's just incomparable. There's something, I think, for him especially, it's about his unparalleled facial control. you know, the things he can do with his
Yep.
expressions are just incredible.
Yep.
But really, their chemistry as a group, as is often the case with this sort of film, not as a genre, but in terms of these films that become transcendent touchstones, it's something about the just perfect chemistry.
Yes, for sure. And then also the special effects. These special that's what I was struck by when I watched this most recently. The special effects look much better. No, I mean everyone always says that, but objectively much better than anything made in the past 20 years, I think. Like anything vaguely supernatural. I mean, it's just the crazy sky, like when Zula's breaking through, the crazy sky effects, which I know are just probably like what I think it's like ink dropped in certain kinds of fluid or something like that. But
I'm sure it's nothing more than that.
yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
it's practical effect work, and I think a lot of
oh
people
yeah.
still rightfully yearn for that.
Well, and I'm trying to double check here and I can't pull it up, and that's fine. I probably should have had that up. I do believe, don't quote me, I do believe the same people that did the effects for Ghostbusters did the effects for another one of my all-time favorite movies, which is Big Trouble in Little China. Um, and it's just I don't know. These movies I think are timeless because of like the casting, obviously, and the writing and the love that's put into it, and like the lack of jaded. There nobody's jaded, right? Like these are just it's a movie about paranormal exterminators in New York City.
Well,
It,
and that's definitely part of it too, because without okay, I'm about to derail us, so make
hey,
sure you
derail.
reel me back in right
No, no,
away.
I bring you on because of the derails because you're a wealth of woo knowledge. So you're the magus.
Well, it's not even woo, it's just to point out that we have become so horribly irony poisoned as a culture that it
Yeah.
is impossible to do anything sincerely.
Hmm.
And
For sure.
that's really where that problem is with the film industry.
Well, in
You
a
know,
movie
they're
like
so
yeah.
preoccupied with their own private agendas and propaganda work that they are incapable of making actual entertainment. They don't know what it is.
Agreed. And I mean, a movie like this only works because people took the movie. I mean, they had a lot of fun with it, but they took it seriously. Like I said before, like it's a comedy, but it's also kind of like there are some legit horror elements in this. I mean,
Oh, there absolutely are.
when I mean, when Dana Sigourney Weaver's character gets like when the arms come out of the chair and like drag her into the glowing portal door. I mean, that is very even. I mean, I know it's coming when I watch it, but it's like there's something deeply disturbing about that. It feels almost like I mean, it's not quite like a Rosemary's Baby scene, but it feels like a violation of her, right? Like this feels like almost kind of like there's a quasi note of like, oh God, like what are they doing to her in that room as they suck her in? I mean, it's
Well, it feels like it because it is, you know,
yeah,
and
I mean, it's just
I
yeah,
think that's obviously very intentional, especially when you consider that character's arc.
yo,
You
yeah,
know, she is very deliberately being violated, not necessarily in the way that modern jaded audiences might think of a woman being violated on screen, but that is exactly what is happening there. And you know,
yeah.
with the same intentionality and the same purpose even.
And I mean, also too, I mean, many people have pointed this out, but we should also point it out. There is a distinct Lovecraftian quality to the big bad. I mean, what is Zool really? I mean, like it's a Sumerian god, okay, but clearly this is just something that was worshipped as a god by the Sumerians, supposedly. But but like what is Zool? Like what is Zool? I don't know. It's some sort of intelligence from beyond. It's very Lovecraftian. I mean, like there's a portal that's ripped in time and space, and I mean, like also too, like it's one of these great settings where like ghosts are real, the supernatural is real, but it's not necessarily clear how much of the supernatural is actually spiritual and how much of it is just like science we don't fully understand because all of the stuff that the Ghostbusters are using, all their tech, is grounded at least in the film, right? In like hard science, in like atomic age science. It's
Yeah, they're portraying it as some sort of genuine but not real to our world yet physics.
right. Which is super Lovecraftian, right? Like, because Lovecraft is trying to work in all these sorts of. I mean, I know you and I have talked about Lovecraft, I think, at least on your show, if not also on my show. Lovecraft is trying to harmonize sort of the supernatural and just the technological. And I mean that's also clearly a theme that runs throughout Ghostbusters as well, because it's not like it's not like they're going to a shaman to get like to say a special prayer and walk, however many times Widdershins to stop Zool. They're blasting they're blasting the portal with proton particle accelerators. I mean, it's just like it's so perfectly captures like post World War II American optimism in terms of like we have the bomb, we have nukes, we can do what we want, while at the same time, uh, because it's not super jaded, pointing out that like the EPA is like this horrible like government bloated government organizations, agencies rather, are just like they just not only do they destroy the livelihood of the working man, but like they might literally bring about the end of the world because they just don't understand what they're messing with. uh
Which was
yeah,
a wonderful, little jab they took at the state apparatus there. I actually loved that. The EPA is one that I think a lot of people wrongly consider pretty innocuous. So to make them the primary bad and the well-deserved bad guy, I thought was delicious is what it
it is.
was.
And I know that we will say no more than you've had some distinct experiences with EPA regulations recently.
Oh, Lord, have I ever,
So
uh,
also we should plug that pause is part of Timeline Earth, and within the Timeline Earth family, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, there's Scarlet Thread Society. The Scarlet Thread Society has its own Patreon. I will link to it in the show notes. People should join. There's discussions. We do book clubs. It seems like me and Paz are going to be talking about John Dee soon for a thing.
So, hold
Yeah, all
on.
sorts of stuff.
Let's go ahead and just derail again right here.
Yeah.
This part you might have to edit out. When are you planning on releasing this? Do you know yet?
Uh, Soonish.
So, would this
We
be a
can
good
wait.
time to just announce what we're doing together, or do
Just
you want to
announce it,
wait
man.
on
You
that?
just announce it. I might not even edit this out. I'll do like Bird does and just not edit it out. Yeah, just announce it.
That's one of our classic moves, right? To just say we're going to edit something and then not do it.
We did not.
Um,
Yeah.
So, as you pointed out, yes, the Scarlet Thread Society has a number of independent operations because I have a voracious appetite for this sort of thing. And given that you and I have done so many programs together already, I thought the next natural extension would be to giving you a dedicated once a month slot to just do something on STS with me in addition to the regular STS content. I believe we decided we were going to call it the Enchanted Office Hours.
Hell yes. Yes.
So, everywhere you already enjoy Doc Brown on his own program, he is now also going to become a formal part of STS once a month.
I'm a little scared about the initiation ceremony, but I hear that it only hurts for like a few minutes and then you're fine. So you have
Well, it kind of depends,
you have to
it
walk
depends
through
on
the
your
fire
pain
how many times?
tolerance, but
You have to walk through the fire. Is it 3 times? I can't remember. It's something like that. Yeah.
well, if that's what they told you, we'll go with it. You'll find out the rest when you get there, right?
um yeah, yeah, so yes, I guess now is as good as time as any, yeah, so I'm quite honored to have Pause extend this offer to me. I will gladly accept it. I will do my best to live up to it. Yeah, we're going to be talking about John Dee, at least for the first one. I think I'm doing some deep prep on John Dee stuff, so I'll link to that in the show notes. If you like any of this stuff, please do check out Pause. His content. Pause is the Grand Magus. I am just an acolyte. But yeah. So this film really just gets to the heart of all the stuff that I think Pause and me really love, which is weird science, said with a Danny Elfman voice. Weird science. Sort of um government critique, critique of the government, weird science, a deep connection to American history, which maybe not as is not as super evident when you first just watch Ghostbusters, but in a few seconds here we'll get into like the history that was baked into the story, which really does connect to American history. Particularly this idea that Paz and I talk a lot about, sort of psychogeography, the enchanted ground of America, and then obviously deep ancient stuff too, right? Like they're referencing this ancient Sumerian cult. It's woo all the way down. It's a whole lot of fun, and there is Bill Murray. So what's not to like? Um, Pause. I don't know if you had a chance to do the reading that I did not assign you, so it's totally fine if you didn't. Um, I think maybe a fun way to kind of trend to a fun tack to take would be to just look at the characters kind of the main Ghostbuster characters kind of as archetypes, if you're okay with that.
I would love to. The real question is, which one of them do you want to start with?
Well, that's a good question. So I'm gonna put my teacher hat on for 2 seconds and say which one is your favorite? Because also I just want to know.
Oh my gosh, I was genuinely afraid you were going to ask me this. I was in fear of this moment. Uh, the
Gun to your head, favorite Ghostbuster. You have 2 seconds to answer.
stance.
Yeah. Okay. That's I actually agree with you, Stance. I know I'm being cheeky here, but I am genuinely interested. Why? Why Stance?
And that's the tricky part, right?
It could be like his aura, his vibe, but is there a reason that you can think of like could you pull out a reason out of the ether? Could you manifest the
So
reason for us?
Egon is a little bit too hard science. I don't necessarily associate with, hey, I'm the real physicist of the group. I'm doing our tech support stuff and I'm into the psychedelics a little bit and I'm into, oh my gosh, there's a scientific answer here and the extra dimensions are non-spiritual. They're other planes of existence. He's got that sort of hard science vibe to him. There must be an explanation thing. And I know that's not quite true, but that's kind of what he gives a lot of through parts of this first one.
Yeah.
And so while he's not a skeptic, he's obviously a true believer. They all are. I don't necessarily like his approach to the quote unquote field of study that
Yeah.
they all partake in. And so while they're all great characters, I love all the Ghostbusters. I'm not saying any of this stuff to rip on him. I'm saying for that reason, he doesn't quite pass my sniff test for the favorite.
Okay.
And as, okay, I'm gonna sound very silly here, but I'm drawing a blank on the
Be
name
silly.
of Murray's character. It's
Peter Venkman, Doctor Venkman.
Vankman. I
What are
was
you a
gonna say
doctor of? I have
I
degrees
I
in psychology and parapsychology. Yeah.
I was gonna say Vendman, and I knew that was
Yeah.
close, but it wasn't
Venkman.
right.
Yeah.
So, and he's very good, but he's still just a little bit too much of a Bill Murray character is my problem.
Well, he's kind of, Venkman is kind of an opportunist. He's an opportunist and he's sort of, you can see, I mean, obviously he's forced to reckon with that something's happening. But throughout the film, he kind of plays with how much he does or doesn't believe in any of this phenomena. And ultimately, as Dean Yeager says, you seem to think of science as some sort of dodge. But it's all kind of a business to him. He's the one that pushes the Ghostbusters to go, for for Ray to take out a is it a third or a second mortgage? I can't remember on his parents'
Yeah.
house. He's the one who kind of who really pushes them to get into business. He's the businessman, right? He's sort of like the for better or for worse, kind of the. I mean, he doesn't have the official title of CEO, but he kind of is the one guiding the business end of things.
Right. The
Yeah.
operational manager of the Ghostbusters, as it were.
Yeah, and you got the feeling too. I mean, they don't make it explicitly clear, but you get the feeling that it's Venkman who's like probably behind the advertisements, the TV ads they do. He's
Yeah.
probably the one behind that, right?
So yeah, I don't necessarily vibe with him because I don't love the Murray characterness of the character.
I
And
get you.
also for the things you've articulated there too, he's just a baby touch sleazier than the
Oh,
rest of them, and I
totally
don't
sleazy. I mean,
necessarily
yeah,
affiliate myself with that.
I
And
get you.
so that just kind of leaves Stance. And
Yeah,
it wouldn't be fair to necessarily call him the initiate of the group because he's obviously a full and clear partner of them all, but he's almost a little bit closer to the everyman character.
he is. I mean, the everyman character really is Zeddemore, Winston Zeddemore, right? Like, and
And
he,
that's definitely even more appropriate, yeah.
yeah, I have a hard time picking between. I think so. I think I identify. I mean, yes, because I build my as I was joking with a coworker at one of my jobs the other day. I build my entire personality off of '80s movies for real. Actually, objectively, I do. I mean, I look at Zeddemore and I'm like, yeah, he's like. He's just if there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe whatever you want me to believe. I don't necessarily adhere to that for real. I kind of can vibe with his like, hey man, I'm just like trying to do a good job. These ghosts are crazy. What are we supposed to do? I
So my issue with him
yeah,
as a character is that
yeah,
while your assessment of him is obviously correct here, he also has moments where he feels a little bit too much 80s action hero-y
for
in the
sure.
context of the rest of the movie, and I think that that just doesn't necessarily always land perfectly, which
I
kind of turns me off a little bit to him in
I can
particular.
totally get that. I think one of the things too, I totally understand that. I like Zeddemore because he's the everyman and he's the only explicitly Christian character out of all of them, which is an interesting thing where there's four main Ghostbusters. They all are busting ghosts. They all are working more or less seamlessly together and more or less kind of min-maxing their strengths and weaknesses, right? They're letting Egon create all the hard science stuff, but they're not necessarily letting Egon think outside of the box because I don't know if Egon can think out of the box. I think there's only boxes for Egon, as you pointed out, right? Like clearly an autistic character who's thank God we have him. You know, every as I like to say, every tribe needs an autist, right? Who else is going to make the containment unit to hold the ghosts? But there's so I see Zeddemore kind of I see a lot of I think a lot of like me and Zeddemore, but in terms of the love and the excitement about what they're experiencing, that stance, and that I think I probably act the most like stance, like Ray, because like whenever, particularly initially, when they're first really making contact with the etheric plane, I mean, what's his expression? It's usually or his reaction is usually something like "Wow," or can you believe it? We actually got readings. Oh, save some for me. He got slime. Save some for me. Like, well, I guess I guess that's technically Spengler who says save some, but he's like he got slimed. We made physical contact, right? Like, it's Ray who has this like great love of the paranormal. And as you point out, the character of Ray, played by Dan Aykroyd, the incomparable Dan Aykroyd, is clearly the one who kind of he doesn't know the science maybe, but he understands a little bit more of what's quote unquote going on, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
has kind of this holistic view of like there there's something trying to it's not just that hey ghosts are real because it's pretty clear that Ray already believed in ghosts. It's that not only are they real, we can sort of track them now, and because we can track them now and capture them, we see that oh there's an uptick in paranormal activity. This might be leading to something, right? Egon's the one spitting the hard facts and data, but Egon's not necessarily, I mean, Egon's making some connections to Evo Shandor, true, but it's like Ray who puts it all together. And so I totally agree, Paz. I think you are really a Ray character. I think you're a Ray, which is not a bad thing. Um, I think too, I don't know if you've done any, do you know anything about Dan Aykroyd's family history? It's okay if you don't, but I know that you're somebody who likes woo stuff, so I'm just testing the waters here. Do you know anything
So,
about
since we began dabbling in the idea of doing this, not just you, but in a little bit of a synchronicity, other people have kind of brought it up to me. And I
yeah.
can fully admit that until a few weeks ago, I didn't, but I sure do now.
Yeah. Um, so if if any of you who are watching this have ever thought, wow, it's like Dan Aykroyd's character, Ray Stantz, he knows a lot about ghosts. Well, that's because not only was he a co-writer for the film, I mean, like Dan Aykroyd's family, the Aykroyds of I believe both, I think they're live on both sides of the border, so both in upstate New York and in Ontario, were and sort of maybe still are to a certain extent spiritualists. So I believe it was Dan Aykroyd's grandfather. I want to say grandfather. Yeah, his grandfather was a dentist who would hold seances on Sunday afternoons. Um, and so the story goes, and I think I was the one who did the deep research when I was doing our when we were doing our article, me and my colleague on this. So I think I hope I remember this correctly. It was something like Dan Aykroyd grew up with sort of like they had they had several subscriptions in their household to various paranormal um publications, so like scholarly peer reviewed parapsychological publications. Kind of grew up with that just sort of around, and maybe didn't totally make too strong of a connection, maybe just dad enjoys this. But turns out that no, like his like, apparently Dan Aykroyd's father walked in once on a seance that was happening, and there was like a trumpet that was levitating off the table with ghostly voices emitting out of it and stuff like that. So again, Dan Aykroyd is a wonderful showman, and definitely knows how to spin a yarn. I don't know if Paz, did you ever see his Joe Rogan appearance from like 2018?
I did not catch that one, no.
Highly recommended. It's him and Joe just drinking Dan Aykroyd's own vodka, the Crystal Skull vodka, just talking about aliens for like 2 hours. It's very fun, but it's clear that like Dan Aykroyd knows how to spin a yarn. Um, but
And would there ever be any doubt, he seems just on the face of it like he would be a masterful storyteller. I'm sure
oh,
he is.
totally. I mean, totally is. But I mean, I still have to believe him. I think he probably just didn't put too much together until his dad just told him, "Oh no, like as a child, they would have seances, and I this one time I walked in when I wasn't supposed to be walking into the seance, and there was something levitating, talking through this trumpet that was just on the table, just like a ghostly voice emitting out of this thing, and it's like, make of that what you will." Um, so Dan Aykroyd, his whole family's been into spiritualism. They were spiritualists, and from the research I was doing, I really got the impression that Ghostbusters in a way was him obviously wanting to tell a great story because, like we've been saying, he's a great storyteller and ultimately is a showman. He's an actor. He's a comedian, right? He's one of the Blues Brothers, for Pete's sake. I mean, like
Right.
he sings and he dances and he does all these things. He makes vodka now. But yeah, like this was I think in a way him reconnecting with his family history. And so if we take it through that lens, maybe we can look at each of the Ghostbusters characters through the lens of spiritualism, when spiritualism really started. Um, Maybe not so much in the spiritualists themselves, right? You have like the Fox sisters famously in the US, and then there's various other British mediums that we could look at and talk about wrapping tables or anything like that. But I think it's equally interesting, particularly for this a discussion of this movie, of looking at different responses to spiritualism, to seances when it was really taking off and taking the world by storm. You had the people such if you want to think about sort of in a more archetypal way, you had the people just trying to make money off of it, right? Was it real? Was it fake? Doesn't really matter. Are people coming in? Are people paying their how many cents it was, right, to go in and watch the fantastic Fox sisters, right, levitate the table off the stage? Look at what they're doing. Uh, those people, right, are acting. There was many of these during the late 19 and early late 1900 sorry late 1800s, early 1900s. People like Venkman, right? You had the sort of the showman who, it doesn't matter whether he believes or not, right? He wants to excite people about the possibility of contact with the beyond. So you had people like that epitomized by Peter Venkman. You had these sort of the hard scientists, epitomized by Spangler. Spangler's out there creating all sorts of crazy tech to deal with spirits, although you get the sense, as we've been talking about here, that I don't know if Egon really thinks they're ghosts. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and
I don't know if he really thinks they're even ghosts at all.
he's the one who's constantly bringing up extra dimensional incursions, right? That is
Right.
explicitly his character saying that. Um, it gets to a point where, does he actually think they're ghosts? No, he seems to be the one who is most convinced that they are a manifestation of the other, whatever that other may be. And he doesn't seem committed to the idea that that is somehow a human spirit so much as it is an entity from somewhere. And that's the important part. He believes they are from somewhere, that they are a thing.
Yeah. Well, and as we've been saying, the second movie, which is also very good, I do like Ghostbusters too.
Oh, it's excellent.
The
I
second,
really enjoyed it. It's really different tonally from the
oh
first
yeah,
one. And we
it's a
definitely don't have time to also cover the
no,
second
no,
one
no.
tonight, but in a
The
lot of
second, yeah,
ways, I might hurt your feelings here. I actually prefer the second one in a lot of
that's
ways,
totally fine.
personally.
The fact that people's emotions can manifest as sludge is pretty accurate. I think the internet has proven that was correct all along. It does manifest as mind goop if you let it go too far. Um, but yeah, like at least in the first movie, it's not clear that any of these things are actually ex-humans, right? Like, were these ever humans? I mean, like they call him the onion-headed ghost in the script, I think. He's Slimer, right? He gets that name from basically the from the animated series, I believe. Yeah. But like is slime he's a disgusting blob. I think he can hear you, right? Like what is that the ghost of a person who just, who was a gluttonous person? Maybe, but it's sort of hard to tell. I mean, he's vaguely anthropomorphic, but I don't know what he is, right? He's just some sort of thing there that has to be caught. Yeah, so the hard scientist. I don't know if you've read anything about this at all, Pause. But like there were people, the Bell Telephone Company, the Bell telephones, they were trying to create for a little bit. They threw R&D money into projects to try to contact the other side using telecommunications. Um,
And that is something that still goes around every once in a while during Halloween season is talking about this again. It's a little bit of a copy pasta or one of those creepy pasta memes, but
yeah,
yeah,
I mean, well, I mean, and that it totally holds on in modern whatever. I mean, whatever Zach Bagans is trying to do, I do enjoy watching him. I'm here in the abandoned mine shaft. But EV, I,
it's
EVP,
just so clear he's hungry for attention.
I know.
And that's a tragedy because the stuff he's doing is grounded in the fundamentals of ghost hunting as an art, but it's just so painfully obviously hammed up for TV.
Oh yeah,
He is a quintessential sellout, and
he
that
is a
sucks to say,
quintessential.
but it just is what it
He's
is.
Zach Bagans. I love Zach Bagans, and he's a quintessential Venkman. He's a Venkman. It
Oh,
doesn't
yes, yes,
matter
absolutely.
whether the EVP was real or not. Did you watch it? Were you scared? And did you have a fun time being scared? I mean, I think that's kind of what right. And did he make money along the way for sure?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. But like the idea that you could record ghostly voices, spirit voices via electronic means. I mean, you see this a lot with EVPs, whatever the hell a spirit box is supposed to do. I don't really understand the idea behind that. It's, moves through frequencies fine. I guess the
Well,
ghosts
so
are
I can actually explain the
okay.
principle
Explain
to
away.
you
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
interested
Please,
in
please
that.
explain. Yeah.
It's kinda related to Ghostbusters anyways. It comes from the Fortean school of Wu, and specifically from the sort of Keelian strain that I am so fond of. And
You're a Keel acolyte for sure.
the operating principle here is that if these beings are somehow constituted of energy, that they can interact through as energy through different forms of waves, that if you give them access to a greater band of radio waves than we can interact with as humans. We can only hear so much sound, we can only receive so much incoming broadcast through our human senses. But by using this device, which is in most cases literally just a radio set to scan, we can tune it to a frequency, a wave frequency that they are able to interact on, and thus let this other interact with us.
Right. Which no, thank you. That makes a little bit more sense now. And that totally,
It's literally
yeah.
just using a radio to expand our own perceptive range to get to the right area of perception where these beings could interact with us.
So that totally is essentially the modern version of what the Bell Telephone Company was trying to do. Is like we could using the highest of the most high tech stuff we have. Let's try to reach out there, right, and try to pierce the veil somehow. Um, so you had people like the spirit. I mean, spiritualism was so popular that the telephone company was trying to ride that tiger a little bit. It's very strange. It's a very weird idea. I'm kind of glad they tried. I don't think they had any successes. Maybe they did. Pause. Maybe that's why they shuttered the program. Oh, there's a conspiracy for you. So like that kind of reaction to spiritualism, to seances, is very much epitomized by Egon's character. It's like, well, we can understand this with science. Then you have like the spiritualists themselves. the people who conceived of spiritualism almost as its own religion, and in many cases it was, they like have their own like sayings. There were various like spiritualist Bibles written, quote unquote Bibles written during this time period, late 19th, early 20th century. People corresponding across the Atlantic to try, I mean, the various psychical societies, both in America and in England. Um, people like Arthur Conan Doyle who really went in. I mean, they really like whole hog. Yeah, like this is the new religion for the new age. Um, those people, I think that kind of a response to the phenomenon of ghostly contact, particularly via seances and stuff like that, epitomized by Ray, right? Not only because Dan Aykroyd has a family connection to that movement, but also just in his attitude, right? This, wow, like it's so cool. We made contact, privileging experience over either hard science on one hand, uh, profit on the other hand, and maybe like on, we'll get to Zeddemore in 2 seconds here, but like on the sort of the Christian response, which is, whoa, 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 whoa. Maybe you guys really are making contact with the other side. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe it's not ghosts that you're contacting, or maybe that like it could be something else that you're contacting? Spiritualists oftentimes didn't care so much. They were caring about the experience, right? Are we here? Are we together? Are we holding hands? Are we having this paranormal experience together? It was a hyper, I mean, whether spiritualism really constitutes its own religion is a topic that we probably don't have time to get into, because it sort of gets into what is the nature of a religion, how do you define a religion, how do you separate it from other religions, because spiritualism was also clearly drawing from like various established world religions. There was a little bit of Christianity in there. There was a lot of sort of like the Western version of what Buddhism is supposed to be, the Blavatsky kind of like reinterpretation of what the mystic East supposedly believed, but we're
Well, so and you can't stress that part of it enough, I don't think, because that's kinda at the cornerstone of it. The spiritualist movement was definitely the broadest of the umbrellas, but we shouldn't underestimate just how deeply entwined the occultic mystery school revival was in the Western world under the guise of spiritualism, you know?
for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, this coincides. I think I forget. I think it was on your my on one of, whether it was on you on my show or me on your show, talking about, like this time period you get Golden Dawn, obviously. Everyone wants to get woo together. Right?
Yes,
Like,
yeah, and that's just
yeah,
exactly what I'm saying here.
yeah. But everyone wants to get woo together, but then have very different reactions to it. Right, the spiritualist school really did privilege experience over any sort of broader theology or theory of what's really happening. It's like, maybe this is this or maybe this is that, I don't know. I'm here to see ghosts. I'm here to talk to something that purports to be my dead grandmother. And if somebody were to ask a diehard spiritualist, well, how did you know it was your dead grandmother? Well, they talked like her. Okay. But what if it was something imitating that? It doesn't matter because I'm here for the experience. So this hyper experiential way of dealing with the paranormal, the supernatural, the other, that's very much Ray Stance's character, which is not I'm not digging on him, right? Like that's kind of what he brings to the ghost busting squad. It's like this incredible fascination with the supernatural, but maybe not always the most grounded, because what is his response to the first real ghost they see? Get her. I'm like, get her. What are you gonna do? How are you supposed to get a ghost, right? Like they tend to jump out and get the library ghost, and they get scared out of the library. It's like, what was it? What were you trying to do there? You're gonna sneak around the corner and jump on a ghost? I mean, what's that supposed to be, right? So it just maybe not a little bit more leaping before you look kind of attitude towards it. And then, I mean, if I can be so bold, I do think, I know he, as we've said, he's sort of an awkward character. He enters the movie at least halfway through, if not a little bit later. Zeddemore, though, Zeddamore's experiencing what they're experiencing. And when he first arrives, it's like, I'll believe whatever I need to believe, right? To get a city paycheck. But it comes out pretty quickly that like, oh, Zeddamore's actually, he's the only explicitly Christian member of Ghostbusters. And he is there with them, busting ghosts, doing all this stuff. But he is viewing the whole thing through an explicitly biblical lens, right? He's connecting the the uptick in paranormal activity in New York with the end of the world, like from Revelation, right? He's making
Yeah.
that explicit connection.
Well,
Um,
and there's that scene where they're sitting in the front seat of whatever vehicle. Where are they in their
Ecto One,
Ghostbuster mode? Yeah, Ecto
yeah,
One, their
yeah.
Ghostbuster mobile, and he's quoting the Book of Revelation, or they're quoting it to each other rather. But he's the one who prompts it.
And he's the one who believes it. So Ray knows the quote, although they modify the quote a little bit, but
They do.
he knows the Bibles, he knows the scripture, but he doesn't necessarily believe it. It's Winston who's like, have you ever considered that the reason we're getting so busy is because the dead are rising from their graves? And it's like that's Winston who prompts it, and it's almost like Stance hadn't put two and two together. Stance has all of this knowledge and this great love of getting into the woo, but doesn't really like paste it together. It's Zeddemore who's kind of like, have you considered that maybe there's a bigger bad out there? And well, the movie does a really good job, I think, of really not. The movie doesn't really privilege any of these different interpretations. The movie presents paranormal activities and people trying to stop it and working together who have very different attitudes and beliefs surrounding what's really going on. They know it's bad. They know they got to stop it. Zool I mean, they never tell you Zool is a demon, but I mean, Zool makes people do things that like, you know, happen in The Exorcist. And obviously there's an explicit references to demonic possession movies in even just in terms of the special effects, right? Sigourney Weaver's character Dana levitating 6 feet above her bed, right? Like 6 feet above her covers, right? Like all these things, barking, growling, the animal noises, all this stuff. Um,
Yeah, it doesn't need to beat you over the head with it because it's
right,
very clear what it is.
right. It's
You
very
know,
clear
they
what it,
leave themselves a fig leaf of plausible deniability, but I think it's clear what they want to imply, especially in the broader cultural context of when you could still say, yeah, they're demons, in the US.
that's interesting. Yeah, because I that's interesting. This is what I love about this movie is because people get I mean, you can, like any good work of art, you can get something different out of it every time you watch it. That's interesting that you go to the movie is explicitly referencing demons. I mean, they are referencing demonic type activity, but then when you see, I think this is maybe the part the point I'm trying to get to is when you see Zool, they make it pretty clear that Zool can appear however it wants to, right? It's a chick. Well, it's like it can be whatever it wants to be. Zool is this force from outside. Um, and maybe it is an agent of the actual like Christian view of the devil, but maybe not. The movie doesn't really tell you. If you're anyone like me and Pause, of course you're going to go, "Oh, this is clearly a demon." Because that's what demons are, right? They're these chaotic outside forces that seek to create havoc and chaos and destruction and all the things that Zool does. I mean, if it walks like a duck and it squawks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And Zool is definitely walking and squawking like a demon. But I do like that the movie doesn't like say, "Oh no, it's a demon. We need to," right? Like we need to bring in a priest because it's not really a movie. It's not The Exorcist as much as they play with those motifs. It's a
And, that's
yeah,
interesting. That's something I
yeah.
wanted to talk about too, because
Talk about
at
it.
the
Yeah,
end of the movie, before the confrontation with Zool, you have this mass of Orthodox Jews praying, and
yep.
you have this group of what seem to be Catholic, but they could have been other priests,
They look to be Catholic priests to me. Yeah, yeah.
outside the building as if they're warding it, and yet
And
they do nothing to confront it themselves.
you have sort of like holy roller, the end is nigh, sign holding, sort of maybe Pentecostal adjacent looking type peep folks as well. And then you
Yeah,
have just sort of the undecided masses who are just there to see the Ghostbusters, right?
the
They want to,
spectacle, right.
yeah, they just want to see the spectacle. They're all there. They're all there, like in a way. So what the
I
point that
guess I don't know exactly what they were trying to say with this, but it almost feels like are they trying to gesture at a triumph of science here? Is this a very subtle dig at religion? Is my own insecurity about it reading too much into our current overculture?
it,
That's all hard to say, I think.
no, it's but it's a good question to ask. I guess I will so to save people the time for reading, I mean, I did thoroughly enjoy reading or writing rather the article with me and my colleague. You can find it pretty easily. Check it out if you're interested. I'm not gonna explicitly link. I gotta protect my colleague. But basically the main gist, our final conclusion was the point of the movie Ghostbusters is not to give you one interpretation of the supernatural. It's to give you at least four, probably more, and to say, look at all of these interpretations are in dialogue with one another. I mean, literally throughout the film, right? As epitomized by the different Ghostbusters. They're talking to each other and they're not necessary. I mean, they agree that Zool is real, I guess, insofar as Zool is a thing. Zool is bad. It's bad to have a giant, 100-foot tall marshmallow man stepping on churches. That's bad. Ghosts are generally bad. They cause havoc and scare people. All right, we agree on all these things. We got to catch the ghosts. We got to control the ghosts. We all agree that the EPA is evil because they're not letting us do our job. Okay, everyone agrees with that. But the movie itself kind of is like, dear viewer, what do you think is happening? Which I kind of love because as much as, I mean, as a Christian, I do believe, and I think Paz is going to agree with me, there's a spiritual war out there, and you need to be careful, and you need to be on the right side. You need to be aware of what's going on. I kind of like a movie that doesn't attempt to jam anything down your throat. It just says enchantment is real, the supernatural is real, people are going to have wildly different takes on it. We'll present some of these takes, and not everyone's going to necessarily agree 100% of the time. But what we do need to agree on is that it's bad. Like malevolent forces are bad and should be combated. And I'm like, it is very Pomo, but it's a Pomo that I'll take. Like I'll take it, right? It's a Pomo from the '80s, which is not like saying there's no bit where they go. But really, the thing is that Zool has like a fluid identity, and Zool doesn't really. You're
And
like
he was just misunderstood. Did you consider
misunderstood.
his immigration status between dimensions?
Yes. Well, it is funny because Ray does attempt to kind of do something of a sort of a soft exorcism as a representative of the city, county, and state of New York City, right? He's
Which was
trying,
hilarious, by the way, trying to invoke the secular authority to banish
yes,
it. It was
yeah,
that was one of the best parts of the film.
super funny because right in The Exorcist, it's Max von Sydow being like, in the name, the power of Christ compels you, right? Like the supreme authority of everything, right? This the actual son of the living God. And this is like New York City wants you to leave.
Name of New York.
Yeah. And then there's the great question that's asked him, are you a god? And to give him some credit, he answers honestly, right?
Yeah.
No.
And,
Then
and
die.
then they're
Yeah.
chiding him as if, "Oh, you have to say you are." But it's good that he didn't, right? It speaks to the character's character that
Right.
he didn't give the obvious answer that would have clearly protected them.
Well, or would it have protected them, right? Like, because I think it's probably safe to say that Zool knows they're not gods, right? Like Zool probably knows that, right? They're like four little mortals walking in there with some weird things on their backs. Like, what is this? So yeah, no, it speaks to Ray's, maybe his, I don't want to say ignorance because he definitely knows a lot about the supernatural, but maybe his naivete, right? Thinking that if you just speak nicely with evil, if you're just like, if you just sort of appeal to its better nature, it doesn't have a better nature, right? Like there is no better nature. Zool does not have, this is what Zool is supposed to do. Zool likes doing this. You get the impression that Zool has probably gone through several different worlds, dimensions, and laid waste to it, right? Vince Clortho, one of the helper hellhounds who takes over William Tully, played by Rick Moranis, right? There's all these like weird esoteric lore dump moments where he's like, it took on the shape of a giant slore, and there was like many Zools and whatever it was were roasted in the fire flames of whatever it is. It's just like this like weird apocalyptic visions with all these names that you can't understand.
Yeah, almost like a herald or a forerunner giving
Uh-huh.
the account of the conqueror's victories as he
Yeah.
marches into the next city.
Yeah. Which also too is explicitly Lovecraftian, right? Like all these weird, strange names, like because we've talked about Lovecraft a lot. Like in Lovecraft's story, he just like the Shoggoth came and then if you've never read Lovecraft before, you're like, what's a Shoggoth? There's no explanation. It's like, here we go. It's the sunken city of Rithlier. Where's that? What is that? It doesn't matter. Like, here we go. We're moving up. We're just jumping. We're throwing you into a world you don't understand.
And you know what? I think when any movie or any author does that, that's just a sign of good world building. You know, if you exposition dump everything, it feels fake. Whereas if it's just stated as a fact and you move on from it, it helps give the sense that that is the reality of the fictional setting.
Yeah, and you're thrown into the shoes of the Ghostbusters, right? Like they're trying to figure out what the hell's going on. They have to do all this research. This is before the internet, so right, like you have to know Tobin's Spirit Guide, Bates Spirit Catalog, whatever it is. Yeah, or Bates Catalog, Tobin's Spirit Guide. You have to like know all these. You have to have the right books, an actual physical book somewhere that you look through. To figure this out, and you might get a sense of what's going on, right? They figure out, okay, it seems like this one cult leader, Ivo Shandor, built the building in order to kind of channel power a certain way. Great. What was he trying to do? Destroy the world, right? And ultimately, you have to go as the characters do, the Ghostbuster characters specifically. Yeah, okay, destroying the world's pretty bad. This force has already taken this, this poor little guy and my girlfriend. So, okay, we're gonna stop it. But I don't. What does it mean? I don't know. It's yeah, it's Pomo, but it still has kind of the last maybe semblance in the 80s of good and evil. There's still some sort of sense of good and evil there. You're totally right, Pause, that if they were, I mean, I'm thankful they didn't do this in the more recent Ghostbuster movies, but you could have easily seen them go, yeah, it's just misunderstood, right? Like Zool isn't really bad, man. He's just like good and bad don't exist. It's just power out there, which of course is a very, you know, Thelema trolley way of viewing things. They don't fall to
It
that
is. It really is.
they don't fall to that temptation, which is nice. That is nice. Um, yeah. So you've been very kind, and I know you got to go at some point here. Final thoughts about the movie. Uh, like, why do you love? Obviously, you love this movie. Why do you love this movie? Like, what brings you back to the movie? I guess. Like, what keeps you coming back to Ghostbusters?
I, Ooh, how about instead of trying to answer that question as you presented it,
Okay,
I give you one more thing that's in addition to all the stuff we just discussed.
throw it at me.
Because the content of this discussion is obviously why I keep coming back to it.
Yes.
But on top of all of this, you can still just enjoy it as a genuinely good film on top of all of this. You know, you get all of these things we've discussed, this really deep, insightful, interesting movie that is a commentary on good and evil, and a commentary on the conflict of religion and technology, and a commentary on X, Y, and Z other things that is not preachy about it.
Nope. Not
And on
preachy.
top of all that, it's just a entertaining movie to sit down and watch. You can just sit down and enjoy it.
This is one of very well said. This is one of me and my wife's all-time favorite films to watch together. Like, if we can't decide on something, if we're at odds, I go Ghostbusters. Yeah, it's like never any complaint about Ghostbusters because it's just
It is just easy to watch, and one of the things I said in the beginning, and lost art at this point is making an easy to watch movie.
totally. There is I'll leave you with you and the dear listeners with a recommendation. In 2016, there was a documentary made called Ghost Heads, which is all about Ghostbusters super fans. And I'm talking about people who have invested thousands of dollars into costumes. They go to like children's hospitals, they go to fan conventions. It's this like they have chapters, they have like their local Ghostbusters chapters, kind of. I mean, these are hyper nerds, and you could say maybe, oh, they don't have a life, but when you watch the documentary, you're like, actually, these people do have kind of a great life. They have this whole like community built around a love of a great movie. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. And they're definitely giving back to like their communities, and they make kids happy, and they're awesome. Like spreading the
Fandoms are good, actually. That's the big
yes,
takeaway here.
yes. Good fandoms are good actually. I don't know if bronies are good, but I definitely think ghost heads are good, right? Like I'm ambiguous or so I'm ambivalent about Trekkies. I've had good and bad encounters with Trekkies. No offense to Trekkies out there. I'm certain you get all kinds in every group. But yeah, fandoms overall, right, if properly constituted, are kind of awesome because it's people
Yeah,
gathered for a love of a thing. And I think, I mean, I think it's easy for me to say I'm not part of a fandom, but it's like my brother in Christ to myself. What are you doing right now? You're sitting down with a guy who runs a secret society that talks about paranormal stuff, talking about a movie, talking about paranormal stuff. Everyone's part of a fandom, right? Pick a good
deep
one.
down a recursive rabbit hole there.
Yeah, cool. Well, pause. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day. I know it's you got time constraints. I appreciate that. Thank you again for being flexible with the reschedule. Where can people? I'll drop your deets in the show notes, along with the Scarlet Thread Society Patreon, along with Timeline Earth. But if you want to just hit people one more time, like with just a brief pitch,
Yep.
why should people follow you? Why should people give you, what is it, $2 or $3 a month? I forget what it is. Why should people do these?
Well, so I will actually take a moment to plug my Patreon and talk a little bit about it here.
Please.
Um, so I have been doing podcasting in many various forms now for 7 years, and I have always done it out of a love of interesting conversation. That's what it's always been about. But at a certain point, it is a time consuming hobby and it is a resource consuming hobby to do it well. Whether or not I do it well is in the eye of the beholder. But I am now running my own Patreon to support my efforts to do even more of this stuff. I am part of the Timeline Earth brand. Check us out there first. Come and find us, quote unquote, live at noon every Wednesday. But uh, also on that feed, you will find the Scarlet Thread Society. And if you want even more out of the Scarlet Thread Society, there is even more to be had. I am charging nominal fees on the Patreon uh, just to justify some of the equipment costs, some of the time investment in doing the research on this stuff, and in tracking down the people I need to find to make this worthwhile and entertaining for you all.
Can I say one thing to that? So,
Please.
y'all, I have a PhD and have done a dissertation. I know what it is to know a lot about something. So, but Paz knows a shit ton about this stuff and does a great job of curating a discussion around it. That's coming. Like, I've done deep research. Paz clearly has done years of research on this stuff. So take it from me. Whatever, however you view a PhD in terms of what that's worth, like having done one of those, Paz clearly knows what he's talking about and does a great job of talking about it. So please, it's a compliment to you, Paz, and it's a call to action for people to join us, join our secret society, join Paz's secret society. It's great.
And even if you are on the fence about it, there is a free membership where you get all the actual STS episodes, just fed separately, specifically curated there, so you don't have to sift through Timeline Earth to find them specifically if you don't want to.
Yeah, that makes it nice, makes it convenient. You
So
get
there's
to
free
pop up.
memberships to check it out. If you find something on there that you specifically like, there are $3 tiers where you can just choose to be getting that stuff. And there are extra tiers now because of how the project has expanded. If you want all of the goodies, there are options to get that. And if you would prefer even something else, just reach out to me, man. I'm flexible. Um, Plugging a specific piece I just did because I'm very proud of it. I just
Please
did an
plug.
hour-and-a-half discussion with an author named Peter David Orr about the viability of a certain Austrian gentleman finishing out his life in Argentina. And
Fascinating. Yeah, I saw that you actually got an expert on.
a genuine subject matter expert on
Yeah,
something that is an extremely controversial topic. And I guess the point in saying this is just what this pitch already was. Like, we are doing a lot, and there's a lot that goes into it. So consider checking out the Scarlet Thread Society Patreon if you have not already.
it's the perfect time of year, folks, to do this. But I like to think that every season is spooky season. If you're
I
re-enchanted.
couldn't agree more.
Every season is spooky, and so we need people doing the Lord's work like pause, even if it's just tracking things, right? Even if it's just tracking thoughts, tracking movements. of entities through time and space and through people and through books, and we need people tracking things, right? We don't have we don't have our ghost goggles in real life. Wouldn't that be nice? So we have to have people like Paz doing the good work of tracking it through its effects. So please do check out Scarlet Thread Society. It's a whole lot of fun along the way too. I don't just say this because I'm on board now. I'm very happy to be on board. Thank you again, Paz. I say this because it's genuinely fun. It's hilarious. It takes the subject matter seriously, but I think it's safe to say that you guys don't take yourselves too seriously, which is kind of what you need. You find that perfect balance between the two. And so please do check it out, everyone. Pause. Any final shout outs, calls to action, anything before I let you go?
Final plug. If you go to the Patreon and you sign up even as a free member, there will be a link to the Discord. I would like to see that grow because that's where all the real interactivity is. You had said it's a secret society. Well, Discord is not secure enough to be a secret society, but I will say that the point of Discord and the point of having a Discord for this operation is to foster these kinds of interesting conversations with an intentional curation of the community where it does not have to involve any sort of central figurehead, in this instance, me or the doc or any of my other guests. I firmly believe that you, as a listener, by having had the capacity to have discovered this content, have the capacity to create it for yourself. And I invite you to come and join me in the Discord and do just that.
Amen. Thank you, Paz, so much. Let's have you back on whenever time allows. We'll do some more fun, spooky stuff. And I'm obviously I gotta get on this John D thing. I gotta read up. So I'm gonna go do that right now. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
All right. Peace, everyone. Have a good weekend, or whenever this drops, have a good week. And yeah, see you next time.